It's good to be back here with you again, and it's good to be past these last 4 weeks, which were actually pretty horrible to go through. As you all know, me and my brother, we lost our mother, and I just want to thank everybody who sent me a card or an email or a text or a word of encouragement. Thank you all. It's good to have so many friends in all of these different churches, really. And it's good to be back, to get back into the work and doing the things that God wants us to do and that my mother would want me to do, and my dad too. You know, I lost him back in almost 15 years ago now. Time flies, and we are all going to go through trials and problems in life. And some of you already are here. I mean, we have people in here right now, today, in this sanctuary, whose kids are battling COVID. And we have people who have many other difficulties and problems and struggles in life. So today I want to share with you what happened to our family for a few minutes. And then I want to talk a little bit about how all of this is affecting us as a country, and I'll give you a few thoughts on where I think this is all going. And then lastly, I want to share with you a little bit about what we as a church are going to be doing and need to be doing in order to fulfill the commission that God has for us. On this next picture, you see my mother when she was 17 years old. This is what she told me. She told me she was 17 when this picture was taken. When she died, she was 89 plus. She celebrated her 89th birthday in March, and she lived with my brother down in Florida. And in the last year and a half, 2 years, she had a difficult time taking showers. And so we hired a lady to come to the house and just help her with that. My brother Bob, he took care of just about everything else. He's a really good cook, and he took care of cooking and cleaning and helping Mom with everything else, which in the last year included all kinds of personal help, going to the bathroom and all of that stuff. So my brother took care of all of that, but we've had this one lady come and just do the showers. Well, in early July, this lady called my brother and said she couldn't come anymore because she had developed sinus infection. And immediately I got a little worried because she was a woman who worked with other people, elderly people, and worked for an agency too as her full-time job. And she was also 70-some years old, 2 or 3, 4, something like that. But we needed help, and this lady was really good with Mom and good with other people, friendly and all of that stuff, But once I heard that she was not feeling good, I immediately had my suspicions, and I said to people and to my brother, I says, I hope she doesn't have COVID, And about 8th or 9th of July, my brother calls me and says, Mom's not feeling good, and she doesn't want to eat nothing, and she has a fever, So now I'm really worried, and it took about 3 or 4 days of not eating, not taking any food. She just lost her appetite and ran a fever the whole time, and he called me and says, I can't leave the house now. I can't even go outside in the backyard because I'm worried she's going to fall down and hurt herself. And my mom was one of those people that never wanted to sit down. She was always on her feet. When she was younger, she worked until she was 77. And that's when she retired at 77. And then she continued to work in the backyard, in the garden, kitchen, just on her feet all the time until those last 3 days she was still on her feet, not eating, but didn't want to sit down. And sure enough, he walked out of the house for a minute, came back, and she was on the floor. She hit her head and was bleeding. It was July the 12th. So now we are talking about 10 days later from the time this friend of ours got sick, and she didn't know what she was getting sick with, And I was here in the church on the 12th. We had a funeral that I had to do, and Bo calls me and says, I'm calling 911, and sure enough, they take Mom to the hospital. Sarasota, she's there for 2 days, and by now, I'm on the road going down there to Florida because it's serious. She's in the hospital. 2 days later, they call her and they say, they call my brother and say, come and get your mom. We're releasing her to go home. So he goes with a neighbor. They wheel her out into a parking lot. She's running a fever. She's shaking, literally shaking. Her whole body's shaking. Her head is hanging to the one side. She doesn't know what's going on. She's not herself. And the guy who is releasing her is telling my brother, COVID this, COVID that, gloves, masks, and he's not getting what they're telling him, What they were telling him was 2 days after, what they were telling him was that she had COVID. But she was in such a bad shape that another nurse who happened to be in the parking lot said, what's going on here? And she says, you can't release her. She needs to be in the hospital. And they wheeled her back into the emergency room. Now, I'm telling you this in minutes. This is all taking 3 hours now in the actual parking lot in Florida, 95-degree weather. And she is shaking like a leaf. So they wheel her back into the emergency room, and they readmitted her. So, she's in the hospital for another day or two. By now, I'm in Florida. And I called the doctor, Mom's doctor. And Mom's doctor is also this lady's doctor, who is a friend of the family who is helping Mom. And I say to the doctor, Mom is in the hospital. She has corona. And your other patient, who has been coming to the house, is also sick, but we don't know if she has corona or not. What's going on? And the doctor says, well, we thought she had a sinus infection, and I sent her to get tested, but we still don't have the results. And I'm like, what do you mean you don't have the results? How long does it take? It takes 2 weeks in Florida. At that time, it was taking 2 weeks to get the test results. If you went to a state-run facility, you see. When we got down there, Milos and Jasmina are with me. When we got down there, we rented a place because we're afraid to be with my brother because we don't know if he's infected. So one early morning, Milos found a place, Jasmina or Milos found a place an hour and a half away, a private testing facility. So Milos and my brother left the house at 2 o'clock in the morning with masks on, and you put a piece of plastic between you and Bo, made him sit in the back, and he took him to get tested in a private facility, $150, and he had his results 2 or 3 hours later, and he came out negative. So that was a huge relief, because at this point, they're telling me my mom has corona, she's in bad shape, and now I'm scared for my brother, that he's also going to have it. Well, luckily, he didn't have it, so he's negative. So I'm breathing a sigh of relief. At about the same time, we're finally getting the message that this lady, poor lady, friend of ours, that she actually does have corona. And she's not feeling good. And she's also being admitted to the same hospital where my mother is at. After about a week of that, I'm talking to a doctor, and they say, your mom is not going to make it, you need to take her to a hospice. And there is a hospice in Venice, Florida, just for COVID patients. They only have 6 patients at a time, and they have a bed open, and you need to move your mom there because she's not going to make it. Now, what Milos did, he took an iPad to mom's room at the hospital, so we would call on FaceTime or Skype, and we get to see mom. But by now, she's mostly out of it, you know. I talked to Kim a couple of times. She told me maybe you should take mom home because if she's going to die, you know, that way you guys are with her. Doctors told us that she had corona, mild case, but enough to kill somebody of her age. You know, 89, full 89, and she had been running fever, and she was testing positive every day. And I was thinking if she tests negative, I'll take her home. But if she's positive, I'm worried about my brother, you know, and myself and other people, you know, but mostly I was worried about him. And we moved her to a hospice, and she lasted 3 or 4 days in there, and on the 26th, she died. And they called me and said, your mom just passed away. And it was hard, I tell you, it was hard to lose It's not hard to lose somebody, but it's hard to lose them that way. You know, where you can't be with them. '89, everybody has to die, right? But when you cannot be there to, you know, to see them through that, that's hard, you know. And we did the whole thing, burial service. Milos did a little message, and that was all over. Crawled back into the house. My brother just ended up spending days in his room. Me, I climbed on a bicycle and just rode for hours. So, you know, as time goes by, we recover a little bit, don't we? And we start thinking about good times. And we start thinking about good memories. And I also had anger. I was a little angry at this friend of ours who was scared to tell us what was going on and who was scared for herself. But I still cared for her too, you know. And by the way, yesterday I got called that she passed away too. And then you get angry at the system. At the system in the United States of America, where they knew that this pandemic was coming in November of last year. CIA informed the government of Israel and all of our NATO allies that this was coming, and they informed them of that in November of last year. And in March, the president of the country is telling us it's a hoax. And in July, my mother and others can't get tested, and when they do, it takes 2 weeks to get your results. How does this happen in America? How does it happen in this country? How does it happen that we could not provide it and figure it out with the best scientists that we have in the world, Harvard, Yale, all of these top hospitals in the world, and we couldn't come up with a test where you could get your results back in the next couple of hours for almost a year? And the people are not getting tested. They are getting conflicting messages from the president. They are getting conflicting messages from the CDC. The doctor at the CDC, one day he's telling us to wear a mask. Next day he's telling us not to wear a mask. You know, you have governors who are, you know, not responding to the pandemic. There is no unified rules for anything. So yeah, you know, you get mad. And you get upset. And I look at the country and I want to tell you, you look at these next 3 slides, you see that the politicians are completely divided. You know, you have Democrats and you have Republicans. They can't agree on anything anymore in this country. You have nation that's divided. And you have people that are divided now. People against people. Church members against church members. Kids against their parents. You know, cousins against cousins. Friends against friends. People don't talk to each other anymore about nothing because they have identified with one camp or another and they don't want to participate in a dialogue anymore. Because the other side is evil and we can't have us talking to them. And that's what's going on in this country. And I got mad, and I got my feelings about this whole thing. So now in this next few minutes, I want to give you my take on what's going to happen here in this country after November. And I want to do this in the context of the next week's message. Next week I'm going to be talking about the conspiracy, a worldwide conspiracy to rule the planet. So now I want to tell you my take. This is my opinion. This is no, you know, and I don't want to offend anybody, but this is my opinion. What's going to happen if Republicans win? What's going to happen if Democrats win? So these are just a few thoughts. You see, so if the conservatives win, one thing that I believe is going to happen is that there is going to be an attempt to erase the line of separation between church and state. That's what I think is going to happen. And evangelicals in this country have wanted to have the power for a long time. You know what, in the Adventist system we talk about Protestantism and Catholicism coming together and uniting and ruling the country. Well, I think if the conservatives win, you are going to see a serious effort to erase this line of separation between church and state. I think, number 2, you are going to see a major effort to legislate morality by the government. And we already have a taste of that a little bit. You see, laws against different behaviors that these people want to put in. So what does legislate morality, what is it possibly going to look like if these people get their way? You see, if conservatives get their way. Well, on the next slide, I have a few things that I think they're going to go after. Right now, criminalizing gay lifestyle. You see, there's a huge movement in the evangelical circles to go against gay people, you see, to suppress their freedom to live life the way they want to live. So criminalizing gay lifestyle, criminalizing abortion. It has been a goal of evangelical church for decades to overturn Roe versus Wade, you see. It has been a huge push to do that. And they will try to do that. They will also criminalize and try to criminalize other behaviors such as prostitution and gambling and drug use. And you know, as a Christian Seventh-day Adventist, and we are conservative movement, you know, there is no if and buts about it. Seventh-day Adventist Church is a conservative movement. And we look at some of these things and we say, well, yeah, you know, we need this. Who wants to have abortion? Who wants to have prostitution? Who wants to have gambling and drug use? We need to have laws to suppress these behaviors, you see? But there is also something else that gets suppressed when religious people are totally in charge. And that's this: non-complying religions. You're either mainstream or you're not. Seventh-day Adventists worship on Sabbath. Seventh-day Adventists have their own peculiar beliefs. Mormons are a little different than typical Assemblies of God. Jehovah's Witnesses. You see, and you have a number of these other Mennonites, Amish. You have a lot of different groups that have their own way of thinking and that cherish their own freedom and that cherish their own way of life and that don't want to be told how to live and how to worship and on which day to worship. You see, all of this gets criminalized when you start legislating morality. If the Christian people, you know, the Catholic Church conservatives, Protestant evangelical conservatives, they get into power, some of these things are going to start getting instituted in this country over the next 4 years. Number 3, law and order. We hear that a lot nowadays, law and order. We have protests in Oregon, and we have protests in Washington State, in Chicago, and many of these other places, and you have Black Lives Matter movement, and you have violence, you see, and you have police, you know, and you have this, this total chaos out there, right? And people are saying, we need law and order. We need to bring this under control. Why is this being allowed to go on? I mean, coronavirus is we have a pandemic, and we are having thousands and hundreds of thousands of people protesting in the streets and fighting with each other and spitting on each other and blood being spilled. We need law and order. Well, I tell you, when you go for law and order, one of the other things that you get also is a degree of a police state, you see. And we've been going in that direction in this country. 9/11 happened, Patriot Act, you know, all of these things where individual freedoms and rights are slowly being pulled away. I'll give you an example. When I came to the United States in 1975, I was a 16-year-old kid from a communist country. And I remember my uncle, one of the first things that he told me was, you know, you can walk on the street here and police are not going to stop you. You know that. I said, what do you mean? He says, you can walk here in Chicago on the sidewalk, go anywhere you want to go, and nobody has the right to stop you and ask you for your ID. Nobody has the right to do that. I said, what do you mean? Because in my country, at the time, you walk down the street and any policeman can stop you for no reason and say, let me see your ID. What are you doing here? Where are you going? Who are you going to go see? Where were you? Where are you coming from? You see, so my uncle says in 1975, here in America, and he's all excited about it because he came from a communist country, you know. Here you can walk down the street and they can't stop you unless there is a probable cause, unless you just rob the store and have a gun in your hand or something, you know. So I'm all excited about this. Well, that's gone. You know, that's gone. Why? Because law and order. We wanted to be able to pull over a person who looks like they're from Mexico and be able to check out their ID to see if they're here legally. So they started doing that in Arizona. The famous sheriff, I forget his name, you see, and they passed the laws So now in America, and everybody said, this is a great idea because we need to know who's legal and who's illegal. And if they are illegal, we need to deport them. So Americans across the board, majority of them, they were cool with this idea that you can pull over a Mexican-looking person and double-check their status. Everybody was cool with that idea, except, now what happened is when you do it to one group, you can now do it to everybody. You don't have to be Mexican-looking. You can be blonde, American-looking, Swedish-looking. And now we don't, the police, not anymore in Chicago on the street can you walk freely without any fear that you're going to be stopped, because you can be stopped. So this is an example of how freedoms are taken away. Years ago, Chicago Sun-Times advertisement page, you can go and buy an airplane ticket that people were not going to use, and they are selling it at half the price, and you get a ticket, and you get on a plane, and you go. Nobody asks for your ID or nothing. Try getting on a plane now. They have a scanner, and they can see what's under your pants. They can see everything. 9/11, you see privacy. It's gone. You get law and order, you get police state, you lose your privacy. And there's the next slide there, loss of privacy. And I don't even want to spend time on that. I mean, you know that that's happening in this country already. And then the next one is corporate rights over individual rights. And you remember this gentleman when he made a statement, and Supreme Court eventually agreed with him that corporations are the people. So, if in November we see that conservatives will win, and personally, my personal opinion is that they have very strong chance of winning. I would be surprised if they lose. You see, I think and next week we'll get a little more into the whole thing. But corporate rights over individual rights. So that's what happens if conservatives win. Now, what about liberals? What if Joe Biden wins? And all of a sudden we have a new president, we have a liberal president. Well, what happens? Let's look at some of the things that are going to happen and how they are going to affect us as Christians. Number one, backlash, huge backlash against evangelicals in particular and religion in general. Why? Because a religious right in this country went a little bit heavy-handed, you see, against all of these so-called liberal groups. So now if liberals come back into power, there is going to be a backlash against religion, and there already is. There already is. You have a lot of younger people, generation, who are saying, I don't want nothing to do with religion anymore. If Franklin Graham and the other guy, I forget his name, if they are the ones who speak for Christianity, I don't want nothing to do with it. You see? So there is already a backlash against religion, and it's going to get even more if these guys win. So how is it going to work out? By the way, look at this next slide. This is what I found online. Well, you think we are exempt from you think everybody loves us out there? You think everybody sees us the way we see ourselves? You see, the backlash is going to be there. And it's going to manifest itself in the following way. Number 2, taking away tax-exempt status is one of the ways that they can come against the churches. This church here, we sit on 7.5 acres. How much property taxes do you think we would pay if we were not tax-exempt? This church here collects $600,000 to $700,000 a year in tithes and offerings. And this is between us and our Indonesian church, and our Spanish church contributes to that. How much money we would have to pay in federal taxes if we were not tax exempt. But you know, when America was founded, they gave churches the tax exempt status because churches also do a lot of charitable work. We have a food bank over here. We give food away freely to anybody who needs it. It takes a lot of work, money, and effort by Jasmina and others, to do that. You got to go spend the whole day at the food bank sorting and bringing and packing, and then, so you're doing a service to the society. We have a street beat ministry that Kim does, where we send food and medicine and nurse and other people to the homeless communities, and we do community service. So that's why churches were given tax-exempt status. Well, now, if liberal wing of the country wins, they can come back and they can use this argument that you see right there on the wall that says U.S. church tax exemption costs the U.S. taxpayer over $1 million every 7.5 minutes. And they're going to say, why are these churches, and they're already saying this, why are these churches exempt from taxes when they're obviously talking about politics? And they are taking sides, and they are giving people guidelines, actual pamphlets that tell them which candidates they should vote for. So if it goes this way, this is going to be one line of attack against the churches. Number 3, and this is what, for example, Seventh-day Adventist Church is extremely afraid of, is that the government will come in and say, you guys are discriminating against gay people, for example. Because I don't know how many of you realize this, but in this church, in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and in the most Protestant conservative churches, and in the Catholic churches, if somebody is openly gay, they cannot be, for example, an elder in the church. Milos and I, we are not allowed to marry a gay couple, according to the rules of our church. We have to counsel them to quit that lifestyle, and then, we can do that. So the liberal wing of the country can come back and say, this is just pure racism. This is just pure discrimination. You can't do that. If you want to keep your tax-exempt status, you got to be open to hiring the best person out there, regardless of their sexual orientation. These are real things that are going on in our country right now. You see, on both sides. One other thing that you may get with Democrats, if they win, is universal health care for all. But what happens when you get universal health care for all? Same thing that happens when you get police state for all. You lose your privacy. If you're going to get free health care, then we need to know what you had for breakfast. And we need to know every detail of your life. Anytime the powers, whoever those powers are, anytime they give you something supposedly for free, they want something back from you. So you're losing your privacy. And most people in this country anymore are seemingly okay with it. I don't care about my privacy. You can, take it away. And then the last one, state rights over individual rights. You see how it works? If conservatives win, who do they give more rights to? They give more rights to the corporations. Individual doesn't get much rights. Corporate interests always override the individual rights. If the liberals win, who do they give the power to? They give right to the state. State has the right to pull you over. State has the right to tell you to put on your seatbelt. State has the right to tell you to put on your sweater when it's cold outside because they don't want you to catch cold, and it becomes a nanny state, you see. Either way, we're screwed. These are just my thoughts. I could be totally wrong. What will we do as a church? Where are we going? I want to give you an example from history. On the next slide, you will see a map. This is Roman Empire at the time of Jesus. How many countries can you recognize on that map? What countries do you see there? Which country is this? Spain, Britain, Italy. This is where Gordon's dad was born. This is where Gordon was born. My hand is shaking. What's wrong with me? This is where Jesus was born. This is Egypt, where Pharaoh was born. This is African countries here. You know what this is? This is Greece. This is Turkey. You know what's here? Iran, Iraq, Babylon, Assyria, Nineveh. When you look at this map, what do you see? You see an empire. The Roman Empire in the 1st century AD mixed sophistication with brutality and could suddenly lurch from civilization, strength, and power to terror, tyranny, and greed. Debbie, that's slide number 23. Roman Empire, when you look at it, very similar to the United States of America. A melting pot of all kinds of peoples, of all kinds of religions. You had Christians, you had Jews, you had pagans. In Israel at the time of Jesus, you had more pagans than Jews. They worshipped all kinds of different gods. They had all kinds of different lifestyles. Roman Empire was very, very, very liberal. You can have a boyfriend if you were a guy, and you could have a girlfriend if you were a girl, and it was all okay. You see, there was no problem there. Rome, as a matter of fact, was ruled by many foreign emperors. They had emperors come from Spain and other parts of the empire, and that showed that the Roman Empire to be a vast, look at this sentence, vast multicultural melting pot. Doesn't that remind you so much of the United States of America? So, let's see the map. Next slide, Debbie, please. So here is Jesus. Here is Jerusalem. Here is Jews, Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, Pharisees, teachers of the law. They want to go by the law of Moses. They want to be conservative. They want to have law and order. They want to have rules and regulations. They want to have good life, because if you behave and if you're good, then God is going to bless you. So we have to make sure that you behave and that everybody is good, because then God is going to bless us. This is what they want to do, but they can't because these guys here are in charge of their country. And these guys here are liberal. They don't care about your rules. They don't care about your temple. They don't care about your sacrifices. They don't care about your Mosaic law. They don't care about your Sabbath. So these poor Jews, you see, including the disciples of Jesus, what do they want? They want the Messiah. They want the Messiah, and they found him. It's Jesus. And this guy, he can feed thousands of people with 3 fish. He can lead an army. He can tell the sea to calm down. He can tell the hurricane force winds to quiet down. And the whole nature obeys him. So he's the leader. Let's get these Romans out of power. Let's change it. Let's bring back morality and values. Let's bring back the good, because we are being invaded. But Jesus said in John 18:36, to a huge disappointment of many, Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting for me. But my kingdom is not of this world." So Jesus turned them down in their quest for a temporal and earthly power. You know why? Because Jesus didn't come to rearrange earthly structures of power. That's the next slide, Debbie. Jesus didn't come to rearrange earthly structures of power. I asked Debbie to show that because I want you to read it, to see it. That was not his purpose. That was not his mission. That was not his goal. He did not come to be the king of this earth. He did not come to establish this beautiful Jewish-led empire where everybody was going to worship on Sabbath and where everybody was going to, be a good boy and a good girl. And nobody was going to use drugs and people were not going to watch pornography. He didn't come to do that. He did not come to rearrange the earthly structures of power. And by the way, rearranging the society and culture and social order and politics is about as useful as rearranging the chairs on the sinking Titanic. In the next two slides, you see Titanic. One is a drawing, and the other one, next one, Debbie, is a real Titanic. That's a picture of the real Titanic. How deep is that in Miloš? 5,000 feet, 10,000 feet? I don't know. I heard the number, but Titanic is sitting on the bottom of the ocean somewhere. It's gone. You and I getting all excited about Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anybody else is just like rearranging the chairs on that Titanic, hoping that these guys are going to make our lives better. They're not. Jesus didn't come to rearrange the structures of power of this earth. Jesus came to rearrange the spiritual structures of power. Because the real enemy is not Donald Trump or Joe Biden or any one of these politicians. These are people with their views and with their ideas and with their weaknesses and with their faults and with their strengths and whatever. They're people like you and I. They get up in the morning and they put the pants on. And they have the same problems that we do. Maybe a little more money. But the same problems that we do. The real enemy is somebody else. The real enemy is invisible. The real enemy is the person who has caused the pandemic in the first place and who does promote and relishes and enjoys the suffering of thousands of people on this earth. Today we're going to break 180,000 dying from coronavirus. I can get mad at how our government handled it, but the real enemy are the spiritual forces of devil, of Satan. That's the real enemy. And what do they want me to do? Well, they want me to maybe hate those people in the government. Maybe they want me to get all excited about who I'm going to vote for. Maybe they want me to take my eye off of what Jesus wants me to do. You see? I got to fight the real forces of power. Let me tell you something. Both the conservatives and liberals, they're both wrong. Conservatives don't understand the gospel, and they're pushing this judgment on the world. And liberals, they've given up, even on the beautiful aspects of the message of Jesus. And they're dismissing it. Where does that leave us? The church. You and me, where does it leave us? I'm telling you this, and I believe this from the bottom of my heart. Whoever wins, right or left, there is never going to be an opportunity to preach the right kind of gospel like it will be in the next couple of years. Because the world has gone astray. People don't understand the true message and meaning of the words of Jesus. They don't understand who Jesus is. One group thinks that they need power. The other group thinks that they need freedom from the oppression. Neither one of them understand who Jesus was or what he did. He didn't come to be the king of this earth. After the resurrection, Jesus went to be the king of the universe, not the king of this earth. That's who we are. That's the kingdom that we belong to. That's the kingdom that He told us to go out there and advance. What does that mean? It means to push the borders of that kingdom out, to include more and more people. Liberal people, conservative people. Gay people, straight people. Black people, white people. Any kind of people. Jesus says go out there and advance the kingdom of God. Push the borders out to include everybody in it. Then He called His 12 disciples together. And He gave them power and authority over all demons and to cure diseases. And He sent them to preach the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. You want to know what we need to do as Seventh-day Adventist Christians? We need to go out there, preach the kingdom, and we need to go out there, heal the sick world. And there are a lot of sick people out there. There are 10 cities in Denver of people who are homeless. There are people in the rich suburbs of Denver living in $1 million mansions and living without hope and without joy and without knowing Jesus. And thinking that the solution is here in this world. And it's not. He sent them to preach the kingdom of God and to heal the sick. And He said to them, take nothing for the journey. Why? Because you don't need nothing when you have Jesus. Neither staffs, nor bag, nor bread, nor money, and do not have 2 tunics apiece. Take nothing for the journey, Jesus says. Jesus says, you know what, church? You don't need tax-exempt status to function. You don't need the building. You don't need the 7.5 acres. You don't need the bus that you have. You don't need any of this stuff. Don't take anything with you. That's what Jesus says. Because I'm giving you the authority not over Democrats and Republicans, but over the spiritual forces that are trying to ruin this planet and run it into ground. That's our mission. That's our goal. Our purpose is bigger than to rearrange temporal earthly structures of power. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil. And these spiritual forces are the ones that are in charge on this planet. That is until you and I wake up. They are in charge. But we got to wake up. Because Jesus put us in charge. Jesus gave us the authority. Jesus told us what to do. And this is not some king from Spain that's telling us what to do. This is not the king of the universe. He's the one that's telling us what to do. He's the one that's telling us how to behave. He's the one that's telling us how to go out there and what to do. He's the one that's telling us to resist evil behaviors. He's the one that's telling you now, today, to not hate anybody. You can dislike a politician or a person in power, but you shouldn't hate. You shouldn't hate people who abuse you. You shouldn't hate people who harm you. I did not hate, but I got angry that this lady who was a friend, and she couldn't help it that she got sick, but she gave it to my mother. Now they're both dead. I was truly saddened in my heart when I heard that she passed too. Because we are all children of God. We are all children of God. And we all make mistakes. So Jesus is giving us a different mission. He's saying, go out there and be like me. That's what he's saying. Be like me. In this church, we're going to preach the true gospel of God's love and victory over Satan. In this church, we're going to try to make a difference here in our neighborhood, in our city. We're going to try and do the food bank twice a week. We are working on putting together a number of street beat ministry teams. 3 or 4 people going out there and working in the community, whether it's with the homeless or single moms or abused women, working in the community 2 or 3 or 4 times a week instead of once a month like we did in the past. We want to put together a protocol, a plan, a blueprint that any team can adopt and say, oh, we're going to do this. I want us to be able to, and I talked to Kim and I talked to our friend the doctor, how do we do this? How do we put together a blueprint that any church in this city can take and say, I'm going to run with this too? I know Pastor Gary, who rents from us on Sundays, will do it. Why not Golden? Why not Chapel Haven? Why not Denver First? Why not a lot of these other churches? You know, if they have a plan, if they know how it's done, if somebody mentors them and shows them how to do that, why not get this whole community in this Colorado state to know what Seventh-day Adventists are really about? Not to define us by our hate for Catholics, but to define us by our service to Catholics and to everybody else who needs our help. That's what we need to be defined for. So in this church, we're going to do that. If we can go back on the radio, we'll go back on the radio. Go back on TV, we'll go back on TV. Church plants. Right now, we are pastoring 6 churches, and we are getting very close to planting another one downtown. Church plants. We need to, Seventh-day Adventists, we need to be planting churches in every neighborhood. We have had the same number of churches in Denver now for 50 years. I've been in this church for 24 years. We have the same number of churches. Why are we not having church plants in homes, in stores, storefronts? Why not? Well, I don't know, if the conference is going to do it. I don't know if these bigger churches are going to do it. But I know this, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Why? Because Jesus told us to go out there and advance that kingdom. Why not have a little church by Sloan's Lake? Why not have a little church downtown Denver? Why not, why not have a church between here and Boulder? It's here and Boulder, and then Chapel Haven is out there east. You see how that works? You have Boulder all the way up on the north, you have Arvada all the way here on the south, and you have Chapel Haven all the way out there east, and you got nothing in all of this huge area in the middle. Why not? So I want us to do those things. I also want us to do the mission projects. We have a tremendous opportunity to do mission activities in Africa, Indonesia, South America. Jasmina did her master's degree in international development through Andrews University and met some wonderful people from all over the world. And a number of them told you, didn't they, why don't you have your church come to Armenia and to, what was the other country? South Sudan. The president of the South Sudan was in the class, or somebody big there, and they said to her, why don't you have your church come to South Sudan? One of the poorest places on the planet. We had an invitation from, is it El Salvador? El Salvador. and Honduras. Super poor countries. Why not do it? Why not do it? We're not small. We're not weak. A lot of our people are watching online. Our people are supporting this church. Why not do it? I want to put this into your heart, that we go out there and we re-examine our lives and our hearts and we recommit to Jesus. And how are we going to do this? How? The formula is very simple. It's in this last verse that I want to share with you. How do we do this? We don't do this because we are so smart. And we don't do this because we have lots of money. And we don't do this because we have 7 acres. And we don't do this because we belong to a Seventh-day Adventist denomination and we have a lot of hospitals. No, we do this because we submit ourselves to God. That's how we do this. We go to God, each one of us individually, and we say, Lord, forgive me for all of the junk that I've done in my life. Forgive me for angry words. Forgive me for losing my temper. Forgive me for badgering people. Forgive me for being abusive. Take it away. Take it away. I want to give it up. That's how we do this. Individually. And when we submit ourselves to God for a detailed cleanup and a detailed rebuild, if you rebuild cars, you see, then God comes into your life and God starts changing things in your life. And instead of frustration, He gives you patience. Instead of anger, He gives you calm. Instead of hate, He gives you love. Instead of whatever you want to name it that's negative, He gives you something positive, but you got to submit to God first. And then you got to resist the devil. If God here, and we have an obligation to come to God humbly and say, Lord, please forgive me, And I tell you, I ask God for this all the time. I just ask Him to keep me aware of how sinful I am and how much I need Him. Because I don't want to be feeling one of these days that I'm all good, and I don't need nothing. So I'm just asking God, just remind me every day of how lousy really I am, because I need your grace. And He does. But you also have to resist the devil. When you get the urge, when you get that urge, you know what I'm talking about. The one that's going to lead you into trouble. Where the human nature wants to take over. And Satan is helping you along. You see, yeah, you're right. You can't let them disrespect you like this. You can't let them abuse you like this. You can't let them take advantage of you like this. You can't let these people talk about you like this. And you get the urge to fight back and to tell them how it is. That's when you got to resist the devil. Because God wants you to have peace. God wants you to have Jesus. God wants you to experience the calm that the disciples experienced when they were in the middle of that storm on the Lake of Galilee. That's what God wants you to have. So I think that's what we're going to do, folks. I think we're going to continue to preach and teach and grow and plant and go on mission trips and make a difference in this community. But unless every single one of us comes together and humbles ourselves individually, we're not going to do anything big as a group, you see. So I'm making an appeal to each one of you to look into your own life and to go to the Lord today and say, Lord, show me what needs to change in my life. And He will. And that's what gives me strength to deal with everything that just happened to me and my brother. And to you, because you're all my friends. And there are a lot of people out there watching online, on Facebook, friends of mine, people that I've known since I was a little kid. You see, so when one of us hurts, everybody hurts. When one of them loses their mother, I hurt too. Because I knew that lady. Maybe she was my Sabbath school teacher years ago when I was a little kid. So we're going to have these troubles. But you know what? God, Mom's spirit, Miloš in his message said, Mom's spirit is up with the Lord and her body is here. Because God is in charge. And He will bring the day of restoration one of these days to us. You see? I want to invite you to come back next week. Because I'm going to tell you about Israel. And I'm going to tell you about Russia and China and Turkey and Poland, United States of America. I'm going to tell you about Brazil. I'm going to tell you about India. I'm going to tell you what's going on in the countries all over the world. And I'm going to share with you a message about a group, about a movement that is trying to rule this world. And once they do, then you know that the coming of Jesus is close. So I honestly hope you can be here for this next one, because I'm about to set aside just about everything in my life and just focus on doing the research on all of that so that I can bring you a good message next week. God bless you. Thank you all.